Welcome everybody. We're just going to give folks another minute or so and then we'll get started. Okay, welcome everybody to this Keylime webinar on reviewing performance and setting goals as an independent consultant. As most of you know, annual reviews end up being a standard practice when you're at a full-time job. So you're soliciting feedback, tallying up your accomplishments, writing up your self-evaluation, then sitting down to discuss that with your supervisor, planning out your objectives for the coming year based on both what you want and what they think is important for you to prioritize. Myself, I've always found the process of doing those annual reviews a little bit tedious. So you'd think that now this would be one of the perks of being self-employed is no more annual reviews. Instead, though, I found it's actually even more important for me to take on this reflection, sit down and think about what my goals are for the year ahead and plan those out. As an independent consultant, it's really only you who are in charge of managing your performance and your growth. So today we're going to set out some strategies and tools that you can use to assess your 2019 and then plan for success now in the year ahead. First, though, we want to do a few introductions. So thanks to everybody who has joined us today. I assume you all are self-employed or independent consultants, but even if you're not, hopefully you'll still get a lot out of the time today. I'm going to turn it over to Suzanne Barsoom, the founder of Keylime, and allow her to introduce herself.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you everyone for joining. I'm Suzanne, and I founded Keylime after about 13 years working mostly at Chemonics International and mostly in business development. But I also had some time in the field and some other jobs in that time. So Keylime is an online marketplace for international development consulting with a focus on business development. And on Keylime, as a consultant, you create a profile and then organizations can search for your skills. They can offer you a consulting job and they can hire you all within the app. So it's kind of like Airbnb for international development consulting. We built it to make consulting a more productive experience. So you'll hear us mention some of Keylime's services and some of the features and how to use your Keylime profile throughout this webinar. And we want to invite you to create a profile, which is free and it's easy to help you use some of those features. And at Keylime, I work primarily with the client organizations to understand their needs and optimize their experience finding and working with consultants. And in 2019, we worked with about 30 organizations on about 75 proposals, just to give you kind of a sense of what we do and who we talk to and what we see. And that was with big and small organizations. Some were new to USAID and other kind of the top names and the top implementers that you hear about all the time. And so it's through that work that we've gained the insights that we're going to share with you today from the client side, at least. I'm going to pass it back to Sarah, who's going to lead this webinar, and we will both, I'll be here in the background. So handing it back to Sarah now.
Thanks, Suzanne. So my name's Sarah Steller, and I'm the Consultant Success Manager at Keylime. So I focus on optimizing the consultant experience from start to finish, including lining up the right talent for our clients. Part of my role is also making sure that we're sharing targeted resources for consultants in our industry. So not just for Keylime consultants, but things that are applicable to folks more broadly as well, including through events like this webinar. I'm also a consultant myself, supporting clients with all aspects of proposal development, improving their BD systems and tools, and I also do research on topics in economic development and entrepreneurship. So just a couple of housekeeping notes as we're getting started. This webinar is being recorded, and so we'll have a copy of that will be shared with you in a follow-up email after the webinar is over. We want to encourage everyone to participate today, so as we're going through some of these topics, if it sparks an idea or question, please send those to us using the Q&A box. We're going to take some time at the end and we'll go through those. Any questions, and also just hearing, what kind of goals you all are setting for yourselves in 2020. Some questions may be a bit bigger than we're able to address here today, but we still do want to hear those types of questions because we're always looking for ideas for other webinars that we could do or other resources that we can develop. So the agenda for today, we're going to start by just talking through some questions that you can ask yourself retrospectively to look at 2019 in review and kind of assess your own performance and where you're at. We'll talk about tips for setting goals for the year ahead and developing a plan and to achieve those goals and stay on track with them. And then Suzanne will share a bit about what we're hearing from our clients in terms of what types of skill sets or qualities are in demand and how that can help shape some of the goals that you're setting for yourself as a consultant as well. And then lastly, we'll go through any questions that you all have. So to get started, though, we did want to kind of get a read of the room and get a sense of where folks are right now on goal setting. So there's going to be a poll popping up on your screen here on the webinar panel. So you should have just received that. The question is, do you set professional annual goals or targets? And there are 4 options to choose from. So you'll see those on your screen. Yes, always set specific goals. Yes, but they tend to be vague. Sometimes, or no, I don't set my own annual goals. I'll give you all a few moments just to respond. It looks like a lot of you already have. Okay, so most of you, it looks like, have your answers in. Let's see. The most common response here is yes, but they tend to be vague, which I think is common and something that I do myself. And that's okay. Hopefully this will give you some tips for how you can strengthen those goals and stay on top of them throughout the year. And for those of you who aren't always setting them or you're not setting them at all, hopefully this will give you some ideas or some inspiration for how you can do that this year. Putting those results up for everybody to see as well. Okay. So if you were one of the people who didn't set goals at any point last year, or maybe they were a little bit vague or something you weren't really tracking on, there are still questions that you can be asking yourself to really stop and reflect on your 2019 and assess how things went for you. So the first question, obviously, what are my goals? That's very easy if you actually wrote them down or had something specific in mind. It's easiest to review your year against what you said you wanted to do at the outset. But even if you didn't write down or set any official goals for 2019, it's likely that you probably had, at least in the back of your mind, some types of things that you hope to achieve. There's always something that you're thinking through of, what you're hoping to get out of your work or your life in the year. So it's good to just stop and think about, what did I actually want to do and how did I do against those things? What do I feel went well and what didn't? This is kind of hard, especially whenever you're thinking through a year in entirety, but taking a few minutes to stop and reflect on what events really stand out to you. So if there are particular engagements or points that jump out as you at being especially positive or negative. So maybe you had a client who you worked with where you just loved it, trying to understand maybe what was it about that particular engagement that went so well, or if there was an assignment that was especially challenging for you, thinking about, were there things that were out of your control there, or were there things that you could have done to make that a more positive experience? What feedback did I receive from clients? So hopefully you're asking for this as a consultant. It's really important that you're getting that feedback from your clients on a regular basis, or at least at the conclusion of an assignment. If you're doing any engagements through Keylime, this is a standard practice that we have. So we ask for two-way feedback at the end of every assignment, both from the consultant and from the client point of view, and share that. it's just really important to have that perspective of how things went. I know that at times it can be intimidating asking for that direct feedback, but really as a consultant, this is as close as you get to having, a boss or a supervisor. The client really is your boss in most ways. So it's important to hear from them, what they really appreciated about your work or where you could have improved. The next question is a little bit more basic. Did I earn enough? So it's usually a more straightforward question. Did you earn either what you needed or what you desired to make in 2019? And then the last question here for reflection is a little bit more subjective. So this is going to vary a lot from person to person, but did I enjoy or appreciate my work in 2019? So this is really going to be unique to you based on what your goals are in work, in life, what's important to you. But there are different ways that you could kind of measure the quality of your work, or at least, evaluate what it was. So maybe it's really important for you that your work is meaningful or has a broader impact. Maybe you became a consultant for the flexibility and hours or location. So, you can evaluate how things went for you on that front. Maybe you're trying to break into a new geographic area or try something new. Or maybe you've decided you really want to focus on sort of your very niche area of expertise. So that's your preferred thing you like to work on, and you wanted to dig deep in that area. So this will be different, obviously, from person to person and what's important to you. But answering these types of questions and really taking a few minutes to sit and think about them and jot down some notes, it really not only helps assess your year retrospectively, but also sets you up to plan for 2020 whenever you do these types of reflections. So setting goals for 2020. The first question might be, why even bother setting goals, or why do these right now? Obviously, we know New Year's resolutions are a very popular thing for people to take on. We usually think about those or hear about them, at least in the personal sense. But for this, it really goes beyond just kind of the new year, new me mentality, or trying to, become some new version of yourself. There are studies that show that we really tend to respond to challenging and specific goals. So having specific goals and targets can be a really great motivator for you throughout the year, boosting your own performance and really helping to keep you on track throughout the year. Obviously, you can set goals at any time that you want for any sort of time horizon that you want. So in some ways, you might think the New Year's a little bit arbitrary. But again, there are studies that show that our minds really respond well to this sort of fresh start effect, where there's a clear break in time, and it's helpful mentally to capitalize on this new start and to begin to take action on any longer term types of goals. There are a couple of possible starting points that I like to use whenever I'm planning ahead like this for a new year. So you might find it easiest to start with your 2019 as a baseline, especially if you had previous goals, or if you have done some reflection and you're thinking about what went well and what didn't in the past year. So there could be some obvious goals that would come from this. If you're focused on earning more, maybe you want to increase your income by 10% over the previous year, or maybe you want to make it a goal to achieve 100% client satisfaction from all of your clients that you work with in 2020. But it's also important to think about how those goals tie into your longer term vision. So I think it's helpful to just stop and think for a minute about your reasons for being a consultant in the first place. So why do you do this instead of a regular full-time job? Like I mentioned before, maybe it's flexibility, maybe it's a work-life balance thing. Maybe you just enjoy working with different types of clients and the challenges that can come with that. So really asking yourself, what type of work do you hope to focus on in the coming year? And thinking longer than that, what do you kind of see your work life being and looking like? So that vision might be longer than just 2020. That could be 5 years out, that could be longer. But you can always break that down into smaller increments and kind of figure out what you need to do in the coming year to help get you towards that longer term vision. So setting your goals for 2020. I know we've probably all heard about SMART goals before, so I don't want to belabor this point too much, but I do think it's basically a cliche at this point for a reason. So the best professional goals you can set are going to be SMART, so specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So being specific and action-oriented, it really allows your goal to be focused and therefore your time and energy in the year to be focused. So you're defining exactly where you want to spend your time and effort. By making your goals measurable, it allows you to track progress, which in turn keeps you motivated throughout the year whenever you're revisiting your goals and you're seeing how you're working towards them. This doesn't mean necessarily that your goal has to be a number. So don't get too tied up in that, because not everything is going to lend itself to that type of measurement. But there should be some sort of clear criteria as to whether you're meeting or exceeding a goal. Your goals should be achievable. So there's a bit of a balance here. Obviously, you want to set yourself up for success while still being ambitious. So there are some, trade-offs to weigh there, but you should make your goals realistic and attainable while still challenging enough to motivate you, because that's really the point here. Your goals should be relevant. So, don't set goals just because Suzanne and I at Keylime or whoever else is telling you that you should set goals or set a specific type of goal. So after you've started developing a list for every goal, you should stop and ask yourself, is this relevant to your longer term vision or to your current needs and situation? And ask yourself if now is really the right time for you to focus on a particular goal as well. And lastly, they should be time bound. So we're here talking about yearly planning, and that may very well be the time horizon you're looking at. But it's also important to remember that things don't happen sort of neatly in monthly or yearly increments. So think about, for a given goal, whether the timeline needs to be broken down into smaller pieces or expanded out over a longer period of time for you. And just one other point on this, when you're thinking through your goals, obviously as a consultant, there are a lot of factors that end up being out of your hands. So it's important to build flexibility into your goals, especially mentally whenever you're thinking about them. And so I'll talk about that more in a few minutes, but I think that's important to remember as you're laying out your goals as well. So I wanted to just give a few examples. Again, your goals are going to be very personal to you and whatever, is important to you and your values. So these are some examples of things that either we've set as goals or that we've heard from others that they're focusing on. But these are not meant to necessarily say that these are the best types of goals to set. So you could set an income target as a consultant, either a specific value for earnings in the year or percentage increase over the previous year, or whatever it may be based on your needs. We do see a lot of goals related to specifically client base as a consultant. So maybe your goal for 2020 is to work with 3 new clients, or maybe it is you just want to work with 1 new client, but a specific type of client. There's a certain type of organization, or even a specific organization that you've really been wanting to work with. So that could be a goal. And I will just add that if diversifying or expanding your client base is one of your goals, I would encourage you to set up your profile with us on Keylime, because we can help broaden some of the different clients that you would be plugged into. Maybe you have a goal related to client satisfaction. So if you weren't already seeking feedback from your clients after an assignment, then maybe that's the goal, is just to seek feedback from every client you work with or receive that feedback. Or maybe you want to achieve 100% client satisfaction. Obviously, we all want our clients to be happy after we've worked with them. Another point that comes up a lot with consultants is, it can often be hard to feel as plugged in to things in the industry because you're not in a workplace every day working with your colleagues and having, those sorts of events. So one goal could be to attend, maybe you want to do once a quarter, attend an industry event or some sort of professional networking opportunity, something like that. Similarly to that one, again, whenever you're independent, you're responsible for your own professional development and training and that sort of thing. So maybe there is a course you've been thinking about, either online or in person, that teaches you about a new skill or tool. Maybe there's a certification that's relevant to your work that you'd like to get. So that could be a goal that you'd want to achieve in the new year as well. This last one was a goal that a friend of mine had and I thought was a little bit different. So I put this on here, but she had the goal of having more fun with her work, which I think is a nice one at times. You know, if you want to just kind of make sure you're getting a refresh and a new perspective on your work. So maybe you are trying to have more fun by being more selective about the types of assignments you're taking on. Maybe you're just bringing sort of a different attitude to and perspective to the work that you're doing. There are different ways that you could implement this one, but I thought it was an interesting goal to have. So I'm curious about what kinds of goals everyone here attending is thinking of. And if you do already have ideas or goals that you've set and you'd like to share them, I do want to encourage everyone just to take a minute and add those in the questions box so that we can share those with the group and see those at the end of the webinar. So a couple of other points about setting your goals, whatever they may be, whether you're setting one or a handful of goals, is to, again, after you've written those down and are kind of looking at them, to take a step back and make sure that those goals kind of excite you and motivate you for the year ahead. Like I said, as a consultant, that's kind of the point of doing this. It's for yourself. So you want to make sure that you look at these and you really are excited to start tackling them. It's also important to keep the number of goals manageable. I know in the past I've gone a little bit overboard or gotten too ambitious, and then it becomes hard to prioritize, right? If you have a list of 10 different things you're trying to work on, plus you have all of your just sort of ongoing work and day-to-day, it makes it hard to really focus in on those. So I think a number more like 1 to 5 is more reasonable. Myself, I usually set 2 to 3 and try to make them kind of complementary from each other so they're covering different professional areas. And one last point just to keep in mind too, obviously we understand, we all know that work isn't your full life, it isn't all of you. So obviously here we're talking about professional goals for consultants, but obviously your work does not happen in a vacuum. So it's really important also to take into account any important personal goals you have or personal circumstances that you need to balance those work goals with. Again, this is one of the benefits of being independent, is you can kind of decide what you're prioritizing. So if you have a very busy year personally, maybe you've decided that you're not going to be overly ambitious with your professional goals. Maybe you want to maintain your status quo or something like that. So setting yourself up to achieve your 2020 goals. This is one of my favorite phrases to remind myself is you eat an elephant one bite at a time. I think whenever something seems a little overwhelming, you know, obviously you just have to take it bit by bit. So that's the same thing that applies with your annual professional goals. So break them down into smaller pieces. You want to develop some smaller actions for every week, month, quarter, whatever the time frame may be, so that you don't get to November and you realize you've completely neglected something that was actually important to you. And so you want to have those action items and the steps to really set up yourself to get to that larger goal, and then make sure that they're reflected on wherever it is that you're tracking your regular to-dos and your day-to-day work. So that could be pen and paper on a to-do list or a notebook. That could be on your calendar. I know Suzanne and I like to use Trello for managing a lot of our work at Keylime. So it's just important that you have something there to kind of keep those front of mind and not get buried beneath all the day-to-day and the urgent things that come up throughout the year. And you also want to set aside some regular time to focus on your goals and to review your progress. So like I just mentioned, it's really important that you have some sort of regular review process with yourself to evaluate where you are on things. My recommendation is I like to do this quarterly, but obviously you know yourself and what kind of time horizon works for you. But the point is just don't let it go until, you know, the end of the year. But so you should regularly stop and make some notes and reflections on this. And again, this makes it a lot easier at the end of the year as well. If you've already been making some notes on, you know, what's went well and what your progress has been towards certain goals, then your end of year reflection can be, you know, a little bit more of a step back and kind of looking at the big picture rather than trying to rack your brain and recall things. So schedule those regular check-ins with yourself, put them on your calendar. Maybe, you know, if you've been making some progress towards your goals, tie them in with a little reward or something like that. For a lot of people, this sort of inner accountability of you know, sitting down and looking at them yourself is enough. And if that's the case, that's great. But that doesn't always work for everybody. So if you are a person who responds better to sort of that outer accountability, you know, the one thing you can do is basically find yourself an accountability buddy. So that could be, you know, a friend in the industry, another consultant, you know, a former colleague, whoever it may be. Get together for coffee, share your goals with each other, update on progress. It can also be helpful just to get that external perspective on things, obviously. So that can be a great way to ensure you're keeping on track, learn from others, that sort of thing. So that can be really helpful in addition to just checking in with yourself. It's also important whenever you're doing these regular check-ins that you're accepting that there are things that change. So personal and professional circumstances change, your motivations and desires may change. So if you're looking at your progress towards a goal and you're just behind, you know, you're not on track to achieve that. I think it's important, instead of just feeling guilty or beating yourself up over that, to ask yourself if this is still important. So it just may not be an important goal or priority for you anymore. It's just not working. And if it's not, it's okay to ditch it and maybe you substitute that for something else that has become a priority. If a goal is still important to you, ask yourself why you're not on track. Come up with a new plan for the rest of the year. Maybe you adjust exactly what the end target is there. But again, just to reiterate, you're doing this goal setting process as a consultant. You're doing it for you, so it needs to work for you, and there's no point in beating yourself up if something isn't working. A few other tips for helping you to keep on track throughout the year as a consultant. So it's always helpful to keep sort of a master CV or resume updated throughout the year. So I like to keep a detailed version that has notes on there about more than what I would typically send to a client or share externally, but has a more detailed record of different projects or engagements that then I can pick and choose from. I think it's a lot easier if, as I'm going through the year, I'm writing down the specifics of an assignment and the results and sort of what the feedback was when it's fresh in my mind. Related to that, if you are doing work through Keylime, all of your assignments will be logged whenever you use Keylime, and they'll show up on your profile section. So it's automatically happening for you. As a consultant, it's also important to, this has come up a couple times, to find ways to keep your networks and your contacts fresh. So that could be, keeping in touch with others on sort of the latest that's happening in the industry. That could be, just personally kind of keeping in touch with somebody. This could be your accountability partner. brainstorming different things, learning about what's going on, trends, that type of thing. It could also be keeping in touch with your clients or prospective clients, letting them know what you've been working on, what you're looking for, that type of thing. So again, that can eat up a lot of time. So one thing that you can do too is whenever you have your Keylime profile, keeping that up to date, and your availability means that there's just one link that you can kind of have on what the latest and greatest is on your availability and the work that you've been doing. And one final point on this, as a consultant, it can be hard to kind of share your successes that you're having throughout the year. So whatever progress you're making towards your goals, it can be a little bit harder to put that out there as a consultant. So whenever you're an employee in an organization, you might get rewarded with some sort of award or a promotion, and that's like a very public signal of your success. But as a consultant, that's not really an option for you. So it can be challenging to figure out how to kind of do that, that in a way that's tasteful without, and well received. So one thing that we always do is, like I said, we ask for feedback from clients, and then those positive remarks from them become part of your profile, so that when other prospective clients see that, they can see the successes that you've had in the past year. Another thing to keep in mind, and this could be, with an accountability partner or just with any of your friends and colleagues, is to look out for opportunities to amplify their successes. So whenever you see that, someone is making great progress towards a goal that they had, or they did something that was a big deal, helping to kind of brag on them on their behalf can be really helpful, and hopefully, what goes around comes around in that sense. So related to this, for tips for staying on track, if anybody has anything that's worked really well for them, would love to have any tricks or ideas that you have for how you keep on top of your goals. Again, you can share those in the Q&A or in the chat box. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Suzanne to share a little bit about what we're hearing from clients and how this could feed into your goal setting for the year.
Okay, hi everyone. First, thank you, Sarah, for the presentation so far, and thanks everyone for participating. We can see all of the goals that you guys have set in the chat, and it's really, I don't know, inspiring for me to see goals, that are all very diverse and, from so many different perspectives. And that's part of the fun of being a consultant, right? Is, you get to really invest in the things that matter to you. So what are our clients saying? We want to present you with, what we typically hear from clients, because this can impact how you set your goals, and give you a sense of sort of what the market is saying, which will help you shape your goals and understand maybe if your goals are realistic or can be tweaked. So first, I'm going to tell you about in-demand roles. So really, it's everything. Our clients come to Keylime for all the kind of classic proposal team roles on a recurring basis. Now, of course, some roles have more LOE associated with them, and other roles, we get requests for them on like a high frequency basis, so they're short but frequent, and then the other roles are infrequent but very high volume of LOE. So every role comes in sort of a different form, but what we see is a ton of demand for technical writers, recruiters, proposal managers and coordinators, editors, graphics, cost preparers, and then training and capacity building in the business development space. The main thing with respect to the roles, that you offer is that when you're offering your services, you really want to be a master of that role. Clients are looking for consultants that they can be confident that are fully capable of doing the role successfully, with confidence, and sort of a mastery of that job. So if there's a role that you're interested in pursuing, but you don't have as much experience with it yet, what you want to think about are maybe ways to like get a little bit more experience in that role, or ways to get a little more exposure to it, because you really don't want to go to clients when you're just learning something, because unlike when you're in a full-time job, when you're hired as a consultant, you really are expected to have kind of full-scale expertise in something. So the qualities that we see clients are asking for, or that we see as successful, I would say great consultants are able to strike a healthy balance between bringing your talent and advice to the client and then adapting to their methods. So you can't get too focused on sort of the ideal or the best practice, or sort of a gold standard that you know is the right way of doing things, when you only have a short consultancy, or the time frame of a proposal. But you can always help the client submit their best possible proposal. And you don't want to get too stuck in a situation where you're trying to sort of showcase to them or teach them sort of the absolute best practice. So you have to be willing to use their methods, even if they're imperfect methods, because most organizations sort of they're tied to certain ways of doing things, and you want to be able to adapt to that. You can always try to introduce new practices, but be adaptable to theirs. So that's kind of a key quality that we see as what our most successful consultants, they have that quality, and that's one to sort of think about as you're thinking about whether it's like working with new clients or just succeeding as a consultant. So reliability, this is another one that clients really sort of are counting on you for that reliability. Even if your client hasn't hired you for a full-time consultancy, the reality is they tend to expect you to be accessible and responsive. This is a tough one. So you obviously, always have to meet your deadlines. You always have to show up to meetings prepared, show up to scheduled meetings. That sort of goes without saying. But you want to be clear about your commitments or limitations. But I would suggest, don't talk about like your other obligations, for example, because even when a client has only hired you, say, for 5 days of work over the course of a month, they like to feel like they can count on you and that you're going to be available for them. So always be clear about your limitations, especially if you aren't available for, a time frame or for a phone call, but give them a sense that you're reliable and that you'll be there for them to deliver the work that they've hired you for. And then the qualities that I see in our most successful consultants are adaptability, consultants who are highly engaging and show really strong initiative and are really effective with their time and effort and are focused. Those qualities, I think they all play into some really common goals, right? Because you want to do a great job, you want to impress your clients. Those are all things that are going to help you do a great job. But a lot of consultants, really value like their work-life balance, and protecting their time. And the more that you're able to kind of sharpen that skill on being extremely effective with your time, so that every minute you put into consulting, you're using it effectively. And that goes both for the time that you're spending that's like billable to your client, and also the time that you're not being compensated for, right? Because as a consultant, when you're not working, you're not being paid, and you don't necessarily want to be spending sort of hours and hours at your computer, looking for new work, or sort of just letting time just, sink away during those gaps in between assignments. So you want to figure out your tactics to be like extremely focused and effective with your time. So what are the details that clients want to know? What are the details that clients want to know? Clients really want to figure out if you're a good fit for them using nuanced information. So it's not always enough just to say that, like, an exceptional technical writer. They really want to know more detail than that. So they want to know the specific proposals you've worked on, to be able to gauge if those are similar in magnitude to what they're considering you for. They also want to know about your work style, to know if you'd be a good fit for their culture, for their resources and their systems. And that, if you've done a lot of consulting, I think you'll appreciate that. They care about that too, but I think everyone struggles to share that information. That's one of the things actually we're trying to fix through Keylime. So we have a couple of questions in your profile that try to get at some of the more personality, work style, and sort of cultural, values. So we ask questions like, what are you looking for in an assignment? And the answers that a lot of consultants give are so insightful, and the clients really value that, and they use it to make their decision, because sometimes a consultant might say, I'm looking to work with a team that's really well resourced and dedicated and has like all the subject matter expertise, and then I can, come in with my skill and support them. And other people say, I'm excited to work with, organizations that are, just figuring things out and that are maybe new to USAID or, have a different resource mix. And that's going to, those kinds of preferences are really going to be big determinations on whether you're a good match for an organization. Because I think we've probably all seen situations where you start an assignment and you may have thought that the organization was going to have a different, I think resources is a really good one, only to find out, there's no one on the team that knows what they're doing, or that, they don't actually have any country experience, and that wasn't what you expected, and that can be disappointing and frustrating. So we try to share information through your profile with the organization so that they know what they're getting. So you want to look out for other ways to share this information. So on your Keylime profile, you should have all of your the proposals that you've worked on, and that way the organizations can like search by proposal or by country, or they can see if you've actually worked on something very specific. But don't just limit it to Keylime. Think of it in other ways too. Like, how else are you able to showcase your personality, the details about the types of proposals you've worked on, and things about your work style, so that you can be sure you're getting matched with organizations that are a good fit for you. So how does all this translate into your goals? I would say make sure you're pursuing roles that are in demand and that match your skills. Sometimes I talk to consultants who say, oh yeah, I want to expand into a new role. I want to start doing something for the first time. That's a lot harder to do as a consultant than it is as an employee, because as I said earlier, clients really expect you to bring expertise. They're not necessarily very interested in you taking on an assignment as like a learning opportunity, and they expect you to sort of demonstrate that mastery from day one on an assignment. So if you're looking to pursue new roles, you really have to come up with a strategy of how you're going to get there, and we can help you with that. I've definitely worked with a couple of people who were able to successfully kind of break into something new as a consultant. And then as you pursue the new goals, make sure you nurture these essential qualities. So the reliability and high engagement, strong initiative. So for example, if you want better work-life balance, think about how you can achieve that and still be reliable for your clients. That's one that I've been working on. So I have a lot of ideas on that one, but there are definitely ways that you can demonstrate reliability, but protect your time and still have boundaries that are effective, but don't leave your clients feeling like you're not giving them enough attention. And then make sure that you're always sharing the details that clients want to know. This will allow you to achieve your goals, whether it's more successful consultancies, more satisfying work, new clients, more income, whatever it is. You have to be presenting yourself in the way that clients want to receive that information. So we're doing that for you on Keylime, which is so far been very effective for clients and consultants to kind of get that match of information. But whatever method you choose, just figure out a way to kind of showcase those details to them. So that's it from what our clients are saying. I'm going to pass it back to Sarah for the rest of the slides.
Thanks, Suzanne. That's really helpful. It's good to keep in mind, obviously, as a consultant, you know, some of those sorts of things in terms of client needs and demands and qualities are out of your control. So, you know, you want to set yourself up for success, kind of knowing what those client priorities are as well. So with that, we do want to hear from you. I know that some of you have already been submitting your goals and tips to us, so thank you for that. We'll give, you know, a few moments here. If others want to share what goals they have for 2020, any ideas that have come to mind for them, how they like to track those sorts of things, or just other general tips. And we'd like to share some of those with the group too, just to continue kind of maybe taking some inspiration from each other. So I'll start and I'll share a couple of my goals for 2020. One of mine is being better with time management. So this is something that Suzanne just touched on, but for me, I'm trying to block out more focused work periods on my calendar. So setting aside time and then sticking to it. I found that when I'm working on different projects with different clients, I tend to get distracted and do too much multitasking, and that it's really hurting my productivity overall, making myself have to work longer than I probably would have to. So trying to dedicate some more chunks of time to focus on things. And then I also have an income goal for myself as well. Suzanne, have there been any things that have come in through the Q&A that you want to share?
So there's a lot of interesting goals. So, I'm just skimming through them. Nicole was saying that she's interested in starting an S corporation. So that one caught my attention right away, because I was like, I've done that. I can help you. I can give advice on that, because I know some things like that can be very intimidating, but it's also a really concrete one. So I'm like excited for Nicole to achieve that one, because I know you can do it. And then some others are, more complex, I will say, that I know will benefit from being kind of broken down into sort of those like modular goals of, those interim steps to get there. I'm wondering, are we able to open up the Q&A to the audience to actually ask questions out loud?
Let's see. I can allow individuals to talk. So I can go through and actually allow everyone to talk. You're all on mute, so there's absolutely no obligation to talk out loud, but I am going through and unmuting folks, or allowing you to unmute yourself. So if anyone has anything that they wanted to share as well with the group, or any questions, that sort of thing. But I know you've also been sharing some ideas in the chat as well.
Yeah, feel free to pipe up with a question verbally as well, especially if there's anything that we mentioned in the earlier part of the presentation that was interesting to you and you'd like to follow up on.
I think one goal too to highlight is, it's not always an ambition to work more. So we have one goal here that's basically sort of like a minimum and maximum threshold for work, but not trying to get to trying to kind of, I think she said here, tread water and kind of stay in that happy place, which is probably a nice spot to be at.
Yeah, I think that's actually probably a goal that's like worthwhile for every consultant to have, is a minimum and a maximum, because unlike when you're in a full-time job and your income has is very consistent and a certain reliability to it, as a consultant, it's what you work is what you'll get paid for, and that can result in like a level of unnecessary stress, right? So if it's February and you have a week off, you might feel nervous, that you have downtime. But if you're able to know what your minimum and your maximum is, and then you can look at it on a quarterly basis or on a monthly basis and really ask yourself, well, am I within that minimum and maximum? Or am I overdoing it or underdoing it? It'll give you a more objective way to determine if this downtime is everything you wanted it to be as an independent consultant, or if it's a problem because you may not actually meet your minimum target at the end of the year. Oh, Sarah put in a really good one here. So this is.
I can just speak, I guess. I put
Yeah,
it in
yeah, go for it, Sarah.
but since you guys have been talking a lot, I really appreciate this webinar a lot. And a lot of it's resonating when you say a certain thing. I'm like, yes, especially in particular, adapting your work style to the client and not making it perfect. Spot on. So I guess one of my challenges and a personal goal for myself is really I spend a lot of unbillable time helping people out because I'm networked, et cetera. But I do a lot of proposal writing, right? And it's emergency time. So I'll get pinged on by 4 or 5 clients in a week. And I want to be helpful. I'm not threatened. I want to give work to others. So I've kind of compiled like a referrals list, but I'm just trying to strike the right balance between being helpful, which I want to be, but also just, man, all this stuff is adding up in time, night emails, and I'm tired. So how do you be helpful to your clients or potential clients? Also, I don't know if there's a good answer besides boundaries, but any advice you have on that?
No, that's a really good one. So we are actually writing a blog sometime soon. I don't think we've mapped out a date for this one yet, but on how to say no when you're a consultant and sort of what the most effective tactics are, both for you kind of on a long-term basis and for your relationship with your clients, because you want to maintain the relations, right? You want them to call you next time. You don't want to always be known for being too busy. Sometimes you want to say yes, but you're not sure if you'll really be able to, kind of meet the expectations because you're stretched. Sometimes you don't even want to reply because you're in that stretch period, but in the back of your head that if you don't reply, that's kind of impolite. So it's a really, this is a huge challenge for independent consultants, or at least those fortunate enough to have achieved kind of a level of strong networks where you're getting those constant requests. So I'll just give another plug for Keylime, which obviously this only works if the clients that you're working with are already using Keylime, but this is actually one of the biggest motivations behind we have a decline button. So it's like so much easier to just click decline than it is to write the full email. And it's even just psychologically very easy to click decline and know that it's still a polite, effective, direct way to say I can't take this assignment. And what we see is consultants reply right away. Whereas by email, people typically are not able to reply right away, especially if you're busy doing something. So you obviously can always refer your clients to us. We will definitely help anyone. And we're going to look for other ideas of what we can recommend to consultants in our blog. So if you have ideas, send them to us because we're compiling them.
Great. Any other questions? Thanks for sharing, Sarah. I appreciate that. Any other questions from folks, or just challenges that anyone wants to share, other comments, anything like that? Okay. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today and for participating. Really appreciate everyone sharing some of their goals, and a couple of tips that came through. Hopefully you found some new ideas or some new ways to think about your planning for the year ahead. We really appreciate it. If you're not already familiar with Keylime and you want to learn more, or you want to set up your consultant profile, you can go to our website at joinkeylime.com. Or if you have questions, you can always email me My email address is here. It's sarah@joinkeylime.com. Like Suzanne mentioned, we're also working on building out our resources specifically tailored to consultants, not just Keylime consultants, but consultants in our industry more broadly. So I'll be sharing a link to some of those resources in the follow-up email you'll get with the webinar along with the recording. But if you have ideas for either future webinars, I know we've already received a couple or other resources that you think would be helpful, please do send those our way. We'd love to hear from you. Anything else to add, Suzanne? Parting thoughts?
No, thank you, everyone. It was really wonderful to have everyone participating, and we will post the recording up on our social media, so you can share the link with other colleagues or friends, and please keep in touch.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.